Hello, I'm Matt Donnelly, and this is your Los Angeles Rams versus San Francisco 49ers NFC West rivalry game preview. And we are going to get right into the tail of the tape here as the San Francisco 49ers are currently 2.5-point favorites heading into this contest here, hosting the Los Angeles Rams. Now, starting at the quarterback position for the San Francisco 49ers, we have Jimmy Garopolo here. Now, apparently, Kyle Shanahan, he is stupid at calling plays. At least if you are a lip reader and you can pick out what Jimmy Garoppolo is currently saying. At least that was the case against Denver last week. Then again, Garoppolo, he has been off target on 28% of his throws this season, which is the second worst among the qualifying quarterbacks. Only Justin Fields at 29% has been worse. Garoppolo was 18 of 29 last week there with 211 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Not to mention, he gave us the Orlovsky special there when he stepped out of bounds to take that safety. So, hey, Dan Orlovsky must be the happiest man in America right now after seeing what Jimmy Garoppolo did. Now, LA, they are allowing the 13th most fantasy points per game there to the quarterback position, allowing 19.43, which is much higher than the 14.4 in which they allowed a season ago. The 807 passing yards that the Rams have given up already this season are just one fewer than Tennessee Titans have given up, and they are currently sitting 10th in the league in that category. Jimmy G, he's not going to be mistaken for Kyler Murray anytime soon. And the Rams, as much as they have allowed passing yards, they held Kyler Murray to about 5.8 yards per attempt here last week on 58 attempts. Aaron Donald, he looks like he's back. 6 tackles, a sack to go along with 3 pressures against the Cardinals last week. So you can expect him to become quite acquainted with Jimmy Garoppolo here this week. For Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams, second half, Stafford, he reared his ugly head to start the season so far. And that's the bad Matthew Stafford, if you recall. I mean, there was tale of two halves there when we were talking about Matthew Stafford last season. And we're getting the one that not many of us were appreciative of there. 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions thus far this season. Last week, Stafford, he targeted Cooper Kupp 6 times on 25 attempts, which is probably a reason why that Stafford was held to a season low there, 249 yards. Stafford is now going up against the San Francisco 49ers pass defense, which graded the highest here from PFF there as far as coverage grades concerned, ranking, and they also rank 5th in DVOA. And the 49ers, they are allowing the second fewest fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks at 10.3. Then again, those quarterbacks, they've been Justin Fields, Geno Smith, and Russell Wilson. In that Week 3 contest against Russell Wilson, the Rams, they held Wilson to 184 passing yards there and a 75.8 passer rating. They also hit him 9 times, and they sacked him 4 more. One of those sacks that Russell Wilson gave up there last week, that came to the hands of Nick Bosa, who now has a sack in 3 straight contests, looking to make it 4 against Matthew Stafford here this week. In the 3 games against the 49ers last season, including the playoff games, Matthew Stafford averaged 272.7 passing yards, and he threw 6 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions. The running game is going to have to be big in this contest here. Jeffrey Wilson, the 49ers, against the Broncos last week. Wilson, he had 106 yards on 15 touches while averaging 83.2 scrimmage yards per game thus far this season. Expect Wilson to maintain that every down back stats. He played 73% of the snaps last week, filling in for Elijah Mitchell. Wilson and the 49ers have a tough matchup against the Rams this week, who are allowing the second fewest fantasy points per game at 11.7 per contest there, and they have surrendered just 201 yards on the ground to the position. LA, they held Arizona to 70 yards and 3.3 yards per carry last week. Now for the Rams and their backfield, we got Cam Akers, we got Darrell Henderson here. Akers seems to be transitioning himself out of the doghouse and more on the field each and every week. Last week, Akers earned his snaps, and he made the most of them, rolling up 61 yards on 12 carries, including that touchdown. San Francisco, though, hey, we talked about how tough this Rams team is against the run. Well, San Francisco's pretty darn good, too. They are allowing just 2.9 yards per carry on the season, and they've been the 10th stingiest teams on backs as far as fantasy is concerned, only allowing 18.67 per contest, including limiting that duo of Javonte Williams and Melvin Ingram to 101 yards on 33 carries. Now, Darrell Henderson, what did Harrison do with his touches last week? Not a whole heck of a lot. He had just 17 yards on 4 carries, which is probably why we're seeing more and more Cam Akers as the season's progressing. Now, at least Henderson, he's still going to be that primary pass catching back there, running 28 routes in the last 2 weeks to Cam Akers' 10. Now, this is what we all came for, the wide receivers between the Rams and the 49ers. We've got some super talented players here, some playmakers all over the field. starting with Cooper Kupp. San Francisco is allowing the second fewest fantasy points per game to receivers this season and have allowed 388 yards and just 2 touchdowns thus far to the position. Then again, none of those receivers have been Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp, he is in a tier pretty much all to himself right now. Kupp is 6th in receiving yards with 280 while leading the league in receptions and targets yet again. Last season against the 49ers, Kupp managed to produce 382 yards receiving there, catching 28 of 34 targets in their 3 head-to-head contests. Now, the key here for the 49ers is going to be Travarius Ward, who will likely be manned up most of this week against Cooper Kupp, as he has allowed just 6 receptions and 63 yards on 13 targets this season. If, for whatever reason, Ward is able to slow down or contain Kupp to a degree, it's going to be Allen Robinson's time to step up, who's got just 12 targets on 166 snaps. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't all just Justin Fields' fault last year. Heck, even Ben Skoranek now has more targets through 3 games. 12 total targets. That's what we're talking about right now for Allen Robinson in 3 weeks. He's averaging just 29.3 yards per week and averaging just 7.3 fantasy points per game. In the last 13 games, he has just 1 touchdown. Robinson, he could surprise this week. I mean, like I said, if Ward is on Kupp, then Emmanuel Mosley should be asked to defend Robinson. And Mosley has allowed a 131.9 passer rating. And on 13 targets, 9 have been caught by the opposing wide receivers. So that's an advantage that maybe Allen Robinson can take advantage of this week. Deebo Samuel for the 49ers. LA will be without Troy Hill and potentially David Long. And who knows, maybe even Kobe Durant with that hamstring injury this week. Samuel, he posted 5 catches on 8 targets for 73 yards against the Broncos last week. And in 3 games versus the Rams last season, including those playoff contests, Samuel had 13 receptions for 269 yards and 2 touchdowns receiving. And then he added another 20 rushes for 107 yards and 2 more rushing touchdowns. Will Jalen Ramsey be asked to follow and shadow Samuel this week? I hope so, because I love that matchup. I love the matchups inside the matchups. Give me a good cornerback matchup. Give me against a great wide receiver, and this is what I live for each and every week. It seems that Zoe Ramsey's already forgotten that week 1 performance there, and now has only allowed 5 receptions on 12 targets the last 2 games while defending 5 passes and picking off 1. Now, if Deebo Samuel can get going, we're going to hope that Brandon Aiyuk can keep things going there. Marquise Hollywood Brown, he was targeted 17 times last week against the Rams, hauling in 14 of those for 140 yards. Aiyuk has been Garoppolo's top target this season, seeing 16 targets since Garoppolo returned under center, and he's averaging 14.2 yards per reception. The Rams, hey, if you want to take advantage of the Rams, the passing game, it seems to have been working so far this season. The Rams have allowed 667 yards and 5 touchdowns to receivers this season and have yielded, get this, 51.57 fantasy points per game, which is the second most, trailing only the Baltimore Ravens. And we know how bad that Baltimore Ravens pass defense has been. So if we're talking about these wide receivers, we've got some good ones there. Allen Robinson, Cooper Kupp, Brandon Aiyuk, Deebo Samuel. There's fantasy points to be had. But we've also got ourselves a couple solid tight ends here as well. Tyler Higbee for the Rams, 24 targets. That ranks 2nd on this Rams team, and it's 3rd amongst all tight ends. He is averaging 57 yards per contest there and 7.1 yards per target. He is currently the fantasy football's tight end 10. Now, Higbee, he has run 100 routes so far this season, which is the 6th most among the tight end position, and his 8 yards after the catch per reception, that ranks 5th. San Francisco has yet to surrender a touchdown to the tight end position and have only allowed 23 yards receiving so far this season, which is 50 fewer than the number 2 team, which happens to be the Rams. So for that means George Kittle, he's going to have tough sledding here as well. Kittle, like I said, he doesn't have it any easier. We talk about this Rams defense being able to defend the tight end position as good as the 49ers defense can do it. Well, look, the only difference here is San Francisco is missing Trent Williams, who's now rolled his ankle there. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. So the San Francisco 49ers, much to the chagrin of fantasy managers, may be asking George Kittle to block a little bit more than he's accustomed to. Last week, Kittle had just 4 receptions on 5 targets for 28 yards in his return to the lineup. You got to temper your expectations for Kittle this week. Like I mentioned, he has a tough thing going on here. First off, the Rams are good against the tight end position. Second, he's going to probably be asked to block a little bit more for Trent Williams. Third, last year against this same Rams team, George Kittle, including the playoffs, had just 12 receptions for 87 yards and 2 touchdowns. Last week, the Rams, they did allow Zach Ertz 45 yards on 6 receptions while he was targeted 10 times. With that all being said, if you want to target something, you need to target fantasypoints.com. And how you do that? You use the promo code 22Vipers10. That will get you 10% off whatever subscription you're looking for. College football there. You got the NFL. You got fantasy football. You name it. We got it over at fantasypoints.com. If you want a little bit more, you want to hear me rant and rave, catch the Friday Night Hype Show each and every week over on the Fantasy Points YouTube channel. Trust me, I'm bringing it each and every week, and I'm getting excited for the games. I'm letting you know what I'm excited for. So we'll see you next week. Take care.